Let's do this. Alrighty gamers, how's it going? Daybreaker Rein here, coming at you through a video scope with just another gaming rant, and today's rant is actually going to be a review, much like the last video I did on the Castlevania Netflix series was a review. This is going to be a review and a follow-up video to my last video on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the last time I talked about the Switch was over a year ago, so this is going to be my 1 year in look on the Switch and my overall thoughts and opinions on the system and the few games that I own for the Switch, because believe it or not, I actually own a Nintendo Switch. I know it's crazy coming from me because I was pretty critical of the Nintendo Switch when it originally was announced. So I'm really excited to be doing this review, and I hope you guys all enjoy and give a listen to what I have to say about the Switch. And just like in my Demon Souls video, I want to go ahead and give a big shout out to my good friend Xanthan003 here on YouTube before we get started. He was extremely gracious enough to let me borrow his Elgato game capture device once again for all the game footage that you're going to be seeing from my Nintendo Switch. So I really do appreciate it, and you can find him at all of the links down in the description below. And I'd also like to make a quick mention that the Elgato that Xanthan has is not the HD60 version of the Elgato, so all the games that do run at 60 FPS are not going to be recorded at 60 FPS, they're going to be recorded at 30. So I do apologize in advance if this causes any sort of confusion. I just wanted to make that known that the footage that you will be seeing will be rendered in 30 FPS, and that this is not a performance issue of the Nintendo Switch. So let's take a quick look at the system. As you can see it here, the overall size doesn't really bug me too much. I have big hands, so the system feels really good in my hands. It's also got a good weight to it. The screen is also fairly bright and has really nice vivid colors. All the buttons on the unit are extremely accessible and responsive, but I will say that the game card slot on my unit has some trouble at times getting the game cartridge to stay in. And it's also not the most comfortable thing to play two players on simultaneously when the unit is in handheld mode. Up next is the Joy-Con controller, and I think it serves its purpose. It gets the job done, and it is fairly responsive. But I will say that when it's only one half of the pair, it is a little awkward to handle and a bit small, just because I do have big hands, so that tends to be a problem. But when using the Joy-Con simultaneously with the packaged-in controller attachment, it works great, and it gives the controller some much-needed weight, and it feels really good in the hands. Moving on to the system interface, there's really not a lot I can complain about. It's really simplistic and it's very easy to navigate things. There's not a lot of hidden menus or things like that, so you're not going to get lost in a bunch of menus to get to where you want to get to. It pretty much emulates the PlayStation 4's interface, which I really do like, except it doesn't have any sort of way to sort your game apps at the moment, which is something that I really do hope Nintendo does address, because it would be nice to have a little bit of customization in that field to kind of sort things how you want them to be, or maybe even just to give them an A to Z functionality. And also, speaking of that too, the only themes available at the moment right now are a black and white theme that are pre-installed onto the system. I chose the black theme because it's easier on the eyes in my personal opinion. We got some really cool themes with the 3DS, so I really do hope that they implement some sort of theme customization in the future. Probably about the only thing that really bugs me is that there's no proper way to turn off the system fully via the interface that's currently implemented. You can only put it into sleep mode, and to power it off completely, you have to hold down the power button until the little menu shows up, and then you can shut down the system that way. So that is something as well that I do hope Nintendo does address, and it makes it easier so you don't always have to get up and hold down the power button to turn off the system completely. The eShop just as well is very simplistic. It's very easy to navigate, and there's really not a whole lot of crazy menus that you're going to get lost into trying to find stuff. You could search by typing in a title like most shops offer. You can navigate by price. You can navigate by genre. You can even look specifically for games that have demos available for you to download so you can try games out that you might be interested in. It's really, really easy to navigate, and I really do appreciate that, especially considering I have been an avid PlayStation user, and most of the PlayStation Network stores are very, very difficult to navigate, especially when you're looking for something specific. Alrighty, so that covers my thoughts on the system itself and the controller, as well as the system interface in the eShop. So now I think it's time that we look at a couple of the games that I own for the system. Now, I just want to go ahead and say that a lot of these are not going to be full in-depth reviews. They're just going to be kind of comments on performance and things of that nature, because some of these games I haven't actually completed, or they are actually the demo version of the game. And with that, let's jump right into some of these. So I already used some of this footage earlier on in the video, but we're going to take a look at Fate Extella. Now, this was actually one of the games I really wanted to get on the Nintendo Switch, mainly just because it has all the DLC from the PS4 version, and I'm sure that the PS4 version is probably superior graphically and maybe runs at a higher frame rate, but for what it's worth, the game runs fine. It doesn't seem to lag at all. There doesn't seem to be any inconsistencies with gameplay or anything like that, any notable glitches that at least I've seen. And it's really fun. It's done by the people who did the Senran Kagura games, and I'm a big fan of those. I really like Musou-style games that really just have a constant flow of action, so this is right up my alley. Up next, we've got Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Overdrive. This version of the game has all the DLC that has been released for the previous versions of the game, but it is missing the online functionality that the PlayStation 4 version and the Steam version have. I don't necessarily know why that is, and I really do hope that they patch the online in somewhere down the line for the Switch version, but other than that, it's a really fun game. It's a side-scroller beat-em-up in the style of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, so a genre that I love and a style that I love, so can't go wrong with it. It's really fun to play two-player in the handheld mode, but I will admit that there is some sort of choppiness to it when in handheld mode, so that is something to look out for. Next, we've got Mighty Gun Vault Burst, which is a sequel to Mighty Gun Vault, a game that was originally developed for the Nintendo 3DS but was later ported to PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, as well as Microsoft Windows. It's an 8-bit style crossover game with characters from Azure Striker Gun Vault, Mighty No. 9, and Galgun. It's a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the Mega Man series, because it plays almost exactly like it verbatim. As far as performance goes, I haven't had any issues with either handheld or docked mode. Moving on, we've got Gunbird, which is a Japanese arcade shoot-'em-up that has been ported to many a platform before the Nintendo Switch version, but the Nintendo Switch version runs fairly well. It keeps a consistent frame rate, especially when all the action is going on, and I really enjoy it. So if you enjoy shoot-'em-ups just as much as I do, I definitely recommend this for your Switch library. It's great to have it on the go. I do have one demo that I really want to talk about briefly, and that's Implosion. This is a top-down hack-and-slash style game, similar to games like Diablo, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. I did look up a little bit about this game before I did the review, and believe it or not, this game was actually developed for Android and iOS sometime in 2014. I do have to admit, for a game that was actually a cell phone game prior to its Switch port, its port is really, really good. So I do recommend it for anybody who's interested in a top-down hack-and-slash style game, and I also probably will be buying it somewhere down the line. And lastly, let's take a look at Splatoon 2. Now, this game was the first game I had on the Nintendo Switch because it was packaged with the system. Splatoon 1 was one of the reasons I ended up buying a Wii U, and I was a big fan of it, and I still am. It's a lot of fun, and it's a competitive multiplayer game, so if you're into that kind of style of game, I definitely recommend it. It doesn't stray too far from the format of the first game. It adds a lot of new equipment, and it also has a new single-player campaign that continues the story from the first game. It also adds in a new 4-player co-op mode called Salmon Run, which is fantastic. While a great addition to the game, I will say it does get rather hectic on the higher difficulty levels, and when you're playing with randoms only. Communication is kind of a big factor of the game, so I do recommend playing it with friends. As far as performance goes, the game runs great, and it runs at a solid 60 FPS when in docked mode. Only once or twice have I had network connectivity issues, but not frequently enough to be a hindrance to the overall experience. So before we wrap up talking about games on the Switch, I figured I'd go ahead and throw my opinions out there on some of the more highly anticipated notable titles such as Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. Now, I did play a little bit of Breath of the Wild when my brother first got his Switch, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a breath of fresh air for the Zelda franchise, and given the new direction that this entry went on, I do look forward to future Zelda installments and where they'll go from here. I have yet to play Super Mario Odyssey myself, but it is indeed one of the games I do hope to purchase, having watched a couple people play it on YouTube, as well as watching my brother play it a little bit, and it does seem like it would be something I would enjoy quite a lot. And just like with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I feel Super Mario Odyssey is a breath of fresh air for the series, and I can't wait to see where they go from here. One of the few more notable titles that I did actually get to play a little bit of was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and to me that is the definitive Mario Kart title, and I absolutely love it, and I definitely recommend it for anybody who does have a Nintendo Switch. To me, it has everything that makes a Mario Kart title great. As for future titles that I'm looking forward to, I'm definitely looking forward to Bayonetta 1 and 2's re-release on the Nintendo Switch, Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, Dark Souls Remastered, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze's port to the Switch, as well as Blade Strangers. Real quickly, I'd like to take a small look at some of the sales figure numbers I was able to find for the Nintendo Switch. The chart that I was able to find lists the numbers as of December 31st from 2017. I would like to state that the numbers have probably increased since the time that this chart was updated, considering at the time of this recording it has almost been 2 full months into the new year, and it could be very well possible that Nintendo hasn't updated this chart because the numbers of sales haven't been significant enough to reflect a big increase to that number. It shows that the total number of hardware units sold is 14.86 million, and the number of software units is 52.57 million. This chart also shows that the Nintendo Switch has outsold the Nintendo Wii U, which does surprise me quite a bit, considering that the Nintendo Switch's reveal had a mixed response from my opinion, as well as a rocky launch, but despite all that, the Nintendo Switch seems to have outsold its predecessor, making it appear that the Nintendo Switch had more of a broader appeal to the gaming world than the Wii U did. It could also be as well that Nintendo's marketing has been significantly better for the Nintendo Switch than it ever was for the Wii U. As well, when the Nintendo Switch was revealed, it was also shown all the third-party developers that were going to be developing games for the system, which could have very well influenced the amount of eyes that were on the product, considering the Wii U didn't have nearly that amount of support. Speaking of which, let's look at the number of games that's currently available for the Nintendo Switch platform. According to this list that I was able to find on Wikipedia, there are currently 779 games that are available for the Nintendo Switch, 72 being exclusive, 23 being Nintendo exclusive, 579 multi-platform, and 4 listed as exclusivity unknown. I believe that means that they're not sure if these particular games are timed exclusives or if the developers are planning to port them to other platforms. At least with my limited knowledge on what exactly that means, that's what I can assume in any case. Yeah, I know the Wikipedia page is probably not the greatest source to go to for a definitive list like this, considering that the Wikipedia also does list games that have been unreleased as well as games that have been scheduled for a future release, so it's safe to assume that the number could be a lot smaller. I do believe that the brunt of the multi-platform number is coming from the fact that the eShop has about 400 plus games currently residing on it, but I will say that that is rather impressive to me considering we are just shy of a year in since the Nintendo Switch's launch, and the eShop has definitely improved since the beginning. That's not to say that every single option available on the eShop is great, but it is nice to know that there is a very broad selection as well as some great first-party titles that have been released since the release of the Switch that are available for anybody that's looking to purchase a Nintendo Switch somewhere down the line. Alrighty, so I think I could go ahead and wrap up the review section of this video. Overall, I think the Nintendo Switch has its pros and cons, and it's definitely not a system that's going to be for everybody, but for me, I have definitely enjoyed my time with the system thus far, and I do think that there is a lot of potential for the system to grow and expand beyond what it currently is. Aside from its short battery life, a problem that can be remedied with one of those portable rechargeable battery packs, it does make for a really good mobile handheld unit. It's a nice feature to be able to play 2 players on 1 unit, but the screen size can kind of get in the way of that, and I can see that being a bit of a detractor for some people. And while the point of this video isn't necessarily to win over hearts and minds or convince anybody of an opinion other than their own, I would say that if you are in the market for a handheld unit, the Nintendo Switch is an option to consider. But I will also say that there are other options that are more financially sound and have a little bit more functionality, so definitely look at your options and see what you're in the market for. And go for the option that best suits your gaming preferences and tastes. Alrighty, so with my system review and everything that I wanted to talk about regarding the Nintendo Switch as a whole out of the way, let's talk about Nintendo's recent announcement, a new gimmicky attachment thing that they've decided to develop for the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Labo. Now, I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, so I do apologize about that. But I figured since I really did want to get a Nintendo Switch review slash overview out there in this sort of format of a video, I didn't want to make 2 separate videos because I already make enough Nintendo videos as it is in this series of videos. So I figured why not just kill 2 birds with 1 stone and talk about both things in one video. Now, I really don't have a lot to say on Nintendo Labo as a whole because, let's be real, Nintendo is the king of gimmicks. They always are trying, it almost feels like what they're trying to do every single time one of their new systems comes out is that they try to up the antics of the gimmicks of the previous system. So it wasn't really surprising that cardboard would eventually find its way into being integrated with a Nintendo system. Now, I will say, for what it's worth, I do think that the Nintendo Labo has some appeal. Not necessarily to me, but I can see where it could be a fun little interactive thing if maybe you have a child, you know, that you want to do stuff with, and, you know, it could be like a fun, like, you know, parent to child experience where, you know, you put the cardboard together, you build it and everything like that. And I could see that. I could see it being entertaining in more of a family setting. I don't necessarily see this as being entertaining on an individual basis, especially for someone like me who's, you know, going on almost 30 years old. So I don't know. I don't think it's outside the realm of what Nintendo likes to do, because ever since the Wii, they've been doing all these crazy gimmicks. Like, the Wii was the motion control. The DS was the dual screen with the touch screen. The DSi was, oh, it's the DS, but it's better. It's got better processing power, and it's got a camera now, so you can take pictures. So it's more akin to like a mobile device. The 3DS, of course, was the 3D aspect, still integrating all the stuff from the DS. So it was just kind of like they added more to what they already established. The Wii U was its tablet, of course, and the idea of like you can play it on the screen via the console, and you could turn off the screen and then play the game via the tablet. So kind of essentially what the Wii U was, they combined to make the Switch, more or less, when you really sit and think about it. So in that aspect, it's almost like kind of like their systems are constantly add-ons or evolving. They're just taking what was established with the last system and then just combining it or improving upon it, for better or worse. So with this Nintendo Labo thing, I wasn't surprised. I don't think anybody was. It was a meme, of course, for the brief period that it was. A lot of the people that I associate with were talking about it and joking and laughing about it. But I just was not really opinionated on it. I was like, I can see its appeal, and that's about as far as it goes. I'm personally not going to buy it. I think it's cool that it does, because originally when I first heard about it, I thought it was just like, oh, it's just this cardboard kit that you buy and you can do stuff to your Switch. But that is not it. There are actually games and programs involved. You actually do get a game that has functionality with what you're doing with it. So I guess in that aspect, it's neat, but unnecessary, I would say. I think that's where I probably stand more than anything on this matter. Is it's neat, a novel concept, but unnecessary, because that's one thing that I really felt the Switch really concerned me with, was the idea that it was going to be another gimmicky sort of system, and it didn't need that. You know, like, I know, again, Nintendo is always trying to out-gimmick themselves, it feels like, but I always felt that the Switch could have just served better if it had just been like back to GameCube style. You know, it was a console that you plugged into your TV, and there you go. You have all this room to work with. You could make a console that was very similar in properties to the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One if you wanted to. But Nintendo hasn't really ever been about that. They haven't ever been about the more recent developments in tech. It's always about, I know with Iwata, it was always about wanting gamers to have fun. And for lack of a better term, I mean, that's what I have with the Switch. And that's what I've always really had with Nintendo systems as a whole. Even with the Wii, and as awful as the motion controls can be at times, I've always had fun with it. And I think at the end of the day, for people who are interested in Nintendo Labo and are going to have fun with it, more power to you. I'm not going to stop you from buying it. I personally won't buy it, but I think that's about it, all I have to say on that. Alrighty, so I think that's going to do it for this video, guys. I really do appreciate if you gave the video an entire listen. I know that the audio is kind of all over the place in terms of quality. I do apologize about that. I was talking rather quickly during the Switch review segments. I felt like I didn't really have a lot of time to talk. I don't know why I felt that way. It's just how this video ended up being. So I do apologize about that. And I do apologize if you guys hear an echo. I'm currently in the process of taking everything down that was making soundproofing, I guess, because I am not going to be residing in this house for very much longer. So yeah, taking everything down so there's not a lot of stuff to prevent the echoing. And plus, it probably doesn't help that I moved my desk. So that could also be another thing. So I do apologize for the inconsistencies in audios. But before I continue talking further, I just want to go ahead and say thank you again. And let's have the outro take us out. Alrighty gamers, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to rate, comment, or subscribe. And if you want to check out any more of my content, please feel free to follow the links on the screen or check out any of the links in the description below. And as always gamers, this has been Daybreaker Rein, and I will catch you all in the next one. Take it easy everybody.